welcome to Rugby League Backchat here at the LB Nutrition Stadium in Featherstone. I'm Martyn Sadler. I'm here taking the place of Matthew Shaw for this week. Matthew's on a few days away, a welcome break for him. And it's my privilege to welcome three great guests today, starting with Mark Aston, the successful coach of Sheffield Eagles, who won the 1895 Cup at Wembley on Saturday. Then we have Matt Parcell, obviously a Super League player, currently on loan at the Hull Kingston Rovers, and Stephen Ball, the General Manager of the Rugby League Benevolent Fund. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you to Backchat. I'd like to begin with you, Mark. The shock of the day on Saturday, Warrington beating St Helens 18 points to 4. How big a shock was it? Was it as big a shock as when Sheffield Eagles beat Wigan 17-8 in 1998 when you won the Landstod Trophy? That's always been thought of as the biggest shock so far. Did this one compare with it?
I'd say not, because I think Wigan had gone 8 back-to-backs, hadn't they, Challenge Cup finals, so nobody gave us a chance, except for ourselves, obviously. We certainly believed in it, and John Keir did a fantastic job on preparing us to beat them. But there were no doubt, I've got to say, there were no doubt in our mind before the game, leading up to the game, everything, the preparation, that we would win.
And what about Warrington? I mean, do you think Warrington, what gave Warrington that victory? What allowed them to play so well and beat St Helens on Saturday?
Well, they'll have been committed, they'll have done the job, they'll have executed the game plan, I would have thought, to perfection. And, they're not a bad team, are they?
They're not a bad team.
Aston. Well, they're still a good team. There's quality players all across that field, So, was it a shock? Did St Helens, freeze again on the day? Maybe they did, but credit to Warrington, They're a quality team from the back there with Ratsford right through to, Cooper and the boys up front. So,
yeah.
I don't think it was that much of a shock.
Yeah. Matt, let me come to you. You've obviously played against both Warrington and St Helens. I suppose, like most of us, I imagine you might have thought St Helens would win it.
Yeah, definitely.
What for you? I mean, if you'd been a player on the Warrington side, would you have gone into that game confident that you were going to win it?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, as a team, you back yourselves 100%. I guess it comes down to, if you look at, since I've been here, you look at Cass, you look at St Helens, Cass in 2017, Saints in 2018, and then Saints again this year. Is it good being so far ahead where you've got games leading up to it which don't really mean much? Obviously, Warrington are still fighting for that second place. So obviously, going into it, they didn't have much form, but Saints, the 2 weeks leading in, didn't really have much to play for, so they were looking at the game a long time ahead.
Sure.
So that's what you got to look at. That's a big part of it, I think. And they probably expected to win, and Warrington were the underdogs, so they could just go out there and play footy.
And what do you think about, when a team loses its star player? Blake Austin, the marquee player for Warrington, suddenly is out of the side. They had to play the game without him. Do you think that actually spurs them on? I mean, a lot of Warrington players seem to say afterwards that being without him meant that they realised they had to combine as a team and take St Helens on, and they all had to give absolutely everything.
Yeah, I think so. And if you look at Darryl Clark had to have a big game, and he did. So that definitely helped. He's a really class player. And but yeah, as you said, they nobody really gave him a chance going into the game. Everyone sort of thought St Helens would win, and that's probably the best time you want to play footy. You can just go out there, and you got no pressure on you. You can just go and play, and they did.
Absolutely. Steve, you were there, obviously, at the game as a spectator. How did the event on Saturday stand up to, Challenge Cup finals of the past, particularly given that there were, 2 games on, in fact?
I thought it was a great occasion. I thought Warrington deserved to win. I wouldn't underestimate the Warrington spectators who got behind the team. I thought after nearly 30 minutes and there was no score, that was the opportunity. Warrington began to believe in themselves more. They scored those 2 quick tries, and then the whole of the stadium rocked with Warrington supporters cheering, and the whole momentum, as we see in sports sometimes, was behind Warrington. There was a brief introduction when St Helens scored their try. I thought St Helens may come back, but he missed the kick, and that sort of spurred it on. The second game, I would have liked to have seen that as a curtain raiser to the first
Sure.
game rather than afterwards, I don't think that's a great piece of
No.
marketing
Well,
genius.
we'll talk about that a little bit
I
later.
enjoyed our pre-match. That was great.
Yeah, that was the bigger game.
Yeah, well, the bigger game of the last.
Absolutely. What do we think about the decision really early in the game when the referee didn't go to the video referee? I mean, Matt, you must have seen that, and it looked on the face of it that Morgan Knowles had touched the ball down when he followed through the kick to the line.
He was obviously confident in his decision, and I guess in footy you see that it was a free-flowing game. You saw it from the start; it was fast, and I guess he just wanted to keep pace. But probably in hindsight, I guess he would have gone back and checked it, but he sort of have to move on.
How would you have felt if you'd been a St Helens player?
Yeah, obviously you would have been a little disappointed, or very disappointed. So, but
do you think it might have affected them for the rest of the game? You know, that sort of feeling, things are not going our way.
Yes and no. It was early on in the game, so I guess looking back at it, you could sort of say that. But when you're in the moment, you sort of just got to move on. I guess most of them probably wouldn't have known until after the game it was actually a try.
Yeah, I thought there was another, fairly controversial try disallowed as well when Tom Lynham burrowed through, from acting half back to score, and just very casually brushed the guy who was playing the ball, and then had a try disallowed. I thought that was a really tough decision. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I thought so too. Obviously, the call going upstairs was no try there, so they were looking for any sort of touch. But I think
it was almost as though they were looking for the disallowed one from Saints. It was almost as though they were trying to disallow one from Warrington. I mean, does that happen, Mark, do you think?
Well, we can't be so controversial here. They can only say what they say, at the end of the day. But I think we find ways to disallow tries at times, and I think, sometimes we never had it before. We never had the video ref before. Back yourselves and whether he got it right or wrong, he backed himself and he went with his own decision, didn't he? He'll look back and he'll say, look, I made a mistake, I guess. Maybe.
Do you think the video, is the video referee a good thing? We still have debates about it, don't we? Whether the video referee adds to the game or actually takes away from it. Steve, what as a spectator, what's your view?
When they keep going to the video referee for every try, 8 tries or something, and 7 of them are referred, you begin to wonder why you have a referee in the first place.
Yeah.
I think that frightened of making a mistake. They refer everything on. And I think that doesn't lead to the flow of the game. Yeah. It's interesting, though, you spoke about the St Helens try that was disallowed. If that was in Australia, that would have been disallowed because of their interpretation of the rules, a bounce try. And I think that changed the course of the game. And if I was not necessarily a Saints player, if I was a Warrington player, wow, my whole outlook on that game has changed. It's our day. St Helens should have scored after 2 minutes in front of the post. They've disallowed it when it was a try. It's our day, and I think that would have given the Warrington players confidence. I thought the referee generally had a goodish game. Sure. He kept the game flowing, and the best team won.
It's a shame, though, isn't it, that after the game there was all this talk about the referee's decision. I thought Justin Holbrook in the press conference immediately afterwards was actually really magnanimous towards Warrington and said some really positive things. But of course, he got asked about that decision. And I think St Helens have since then made an official complaint about it, so that it is affecting them. And they were clearly upset. And the thing that struck me about Saints after the game was how devastated their players were. Not surprised. Losing at Wembley must have that effect. Mark, you've never had that experience. You've never had that experience, have you?
I don't want it. I don't want it either. Yeah, they'll be heartbroken, won't they?
What was when you beat Wigan? What was Wigan's reaction? You must have had.
They were great. To be fair, they were great. John Mooney were down on the field, and he just stood there and clapped and applauded what we'd done. And everybody in the stadium. The fans from everywhere they're all Sheffield
Well, I think
Eagles
everybody,
fans,
in your case, everybody wanted you to win, other than Wigan fans, didn't they?
Yeah. And so I thought they were great. Your Betsies and your Robinsons and that were great. They were magnanimous. Had a long weekend, but yeah, they were great. And I guess, yeah, sometimes they won 8 on the bounce, so sometimes it comes to an end, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
it came to an end for them that day, which was, again, I was going to say, what John did and the people at the club and how they prepared us, it was never a doubt.
No, that's fantastic. Do you think that when you see a team like St Helens, who have been so dominant throughout the year, Matt, I'll ask you this one. They've won most games fairly comfortably, haven't they, during the season? And yet when they come to a game like Saturday, they go 12-0 down. Do you think part of their problem was that they've no experience this year in coming from behind to win?
Yeah, that's a fair thought.
And the team forgets how to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, throughout the year, they've won most games pretty comfortably. So when you're put in that position, if you haven't been there before, it's hard to find a way out of it. And I feel like, and that's probably exactly what happened. You watch the game there. Warrington Saints seemed to be on top. They seemed to be looking to score a try, and Warrington just shut it down. Whether it was a great tackle, a great
Warrington
kick,
put a brick wall up.
Yeah,
didn't
they did.
Yeah.
And I think Saints probably got a bit frustrated about it too. As you said, they haven't been in that position all year, and then to find yourself there at Wembley, 12-0 down, trying to find an answer would be tough.
You got the feeling, I got the feeling watching the game that St Helens were making more ground all the time, particularly early in the game. They seemed to be making loads and loads of metres, and yet they also made loads and loads of mistakes. And if you actually look at the game stats, I think they made about 100 tackles more than Warrington in total. It was quite an incredible difference. And, that's obviously why they're tired, isn't it? They just ran out of steam and ultimately couldn't come back, even when they scored that try. I mean, Lattle and Coote missing that goal, it was almost a Don Fox type moment, wasn't it? Everybody, normally you'd kick that blindfold.
And expectation is a big thing.
Yeah.
Saints went there expecting to win. A lot of their players had never played at Wembley. Warrington had admitted they having lost on a number of occasions. I just felt they had the hunger to win that match. And the longer the game went on, that's why I think that first try, or potential first try, was critical. And
if Saints had been given it, it would have been service as normal.
Yeah, they would have relaxed into their game. As it was, they were always chasing. And when you chase, that's when you make mistakes.
But interestingly, Mark, Tom Lynham was quoted after the game as saying that he thought their motivation came from losing the previous year. They lost to the Catalans and they all felt absolutely sick. And I can remember actually Tom Lynham coming out last year looking like death warmed up, really. And is it true to say that when you lose at Wembley, it's such a devastating experience that you probably don't want to ever lose there again? Whereas St Helens, most of their players hadn't played there before, apart from James Roby. And they went down and they were almost overawed by the situation, by the stadium, by the event. And they didn't probably understand what it would mean not to win.
I think you're right. We talked about it when we went back-to-back grand finals. We lost the first one. We lost the first one. I think you got to learn that lesson. That it's not a nice lesson to learn, but they always say you've got to lose one to win one. And we lost our first, and then went back-to-back in, I think it was 2012, 13, 14. But Featherstone beat us on the first one. My old mate Powell beat me. So we got him back at the end. I got him back the year after, and then we went on and beat Batley the year after that. So we went back-to-back. But, I think there's lessons to learn. And certainly with us as a part-time squad, I probably did too much for them. I give them too much to think about. I don't think they slept, probably because I tried to, give them the experience that we'd had at Wembley, so I tried to give them, and I think they couldn't handle it. So the year after, I went right back down, stripped it right back. No suits, none of that, just all the same, casual sort of stuff. Sometimes you over-egg it, don't you? Sometimes you just put it up there too much. And
it can weigh heavily on the minds, can't it, as you suggested?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think you lose one, then it motivates you not to go back there and then lose another.
Well, there's an interesting quote from Mark Percival, who said that, he was absolutely devastated on Saturday. But he said he made himself watch Warrington being presented with the cup by Prince Harry, and it made him feel sick. But that feeling, next year, he'll remember it, won't he? And if they get there again, I think they'll approach it differently. Just a final thing on the Challenge Cup, Steve. Prince Harry gained a lot of praise for his role. He met lots of people, didn't he, on on Saturday.
Met lots of people where the TV cameras weren't there.
Yeah.
A whole variety of people. It was quite funny. One of the Warrington wives said, "Oh, that's a Harry lookalike."
Yeah.
There's only one.
Yeah.
It's 5 yards from you, and we don't have two. We don't have a spare one coming out. But it did speak to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It did speak, in my opinion, to some of the right people as well,
Yeah.
who were heavily involved in the game, different aspects. I saw him speak to a lad who had two artificial legs,
Sure.
who plays
And he certainly raised the
disabled
profile.
rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to see the Royals at Wembley. I've been very critical
Certainly
of the
is.
Royals not being at Wembley.
Great
Let's
to
hope
see
he's
them
there
today.
on many other
I
occasions.
thought Prince Harry made a significant contribution to the event on Saturday. And on that note, we'll just take a short break.
You've spoken and we've listened. Rugby League Back Chat is available on podcast form from all your best podcast providers. If you're on a trip down the M62 or a flight to Toronto or Toulouse, download Rugby League Back Chat for the best debate inside rugby league.
And welcome back to Rugby League Back Chat. Just before the break, we said we'd come back and talk about the 1895 Cup, and we've got the man himself, of course, Mark Aston, who masterminded Sheffield Eagles' incredible victory, 36-18 over Widnes. And Mark, St Helens couldn't come back from 12-0 down, but you did do on Saturday. And I've got to say, you scored some great tries, and I thought Corey Makelam's try in particular was fantastic, and we made it the League Express Try of the Week. So, how did you do it, and what does it mean for the club?
Well, it's fantastic for the club and the fans and everybody associated with the city, isn't it? To go back 21 years, later after we won it in '98, is something special. And people have knocked this competition. They've talked about, it's a Mickey Mouse Cup and all this. No, it's fantastic. The championship players get an opportunity to play at Wembley.
If somebody had said that to you a couple of years ago, that Sheffield Eagles would be back at Wembley in 2019, I imagine you'd have thought they were pulling your leg, wouldn't you?
I thought they were mad and crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. We've had a tough couple of years, there's no doubt. We had the good years, 2012, 13, 14, when we went to grand finals and that, and then we changed. Yeah, we went full time. We made a decision to go full time out of the money that we got from the game, and it didn't quite work for us. So we have to jump back to part time. But we had a couple of years where we were on the road as well. We lost a stadium, didn't we? So we lost.
Well, even though the stadium is not really built yet, and it's fairly basic, isn't it? But it must still be great to be back in Sheffield.
Well, of course it is, because we're Sheffield Eagles, and to play at Doncaster or Wakefield, which we're indebted to them guys for letting us play there, but it's still not home. We lost sponsors, you lost fans, don't you? There's no doubt about it. So it makes it very special on Saturday, and I was so proud of the guys. I never felt that I felt that we could win it. We prepared correctly. We had a couple of people. Adam Brown didn't train all week; just turned up and played.
He scored 3 tries.
Scored 3 tries. Young Ogden pulled out at the last minute. We got a scan on him, and it was MCL has got a tear on it, so he had to pull out. Gustek had never played in the centre. Maitland had played 9 all year off the bench. I put him back to fullback, and just a credit to what they're about. They're a special bunch. They're really close and tight knit, which is something. The culture of the club is good again, and we pride itself on that. But they just did what they needed to do, and yes, at 12-0, you think, there's a bit of a worry going on here. And I just thought they probably occasion just got us at the beginning.
Yeah.
We'd had a long day travelling down.
You scored 2 quick-fire tries to get back into it, didn't you?
Yeah, and then, Thax does what he does, goes full length and scores a try.
One or two people said that was a ball steal when there were
I think he'd lost the ball, I think.
Yeah.
No matter, it's on the sky.
Hard to be sure, but the point is the results now in the record book.
But the most important, I thought the second half we were outstanding. Defensively, they didn't score a point. We run at 95% ball control.
Yeah.
So our 21 sets were completed 20. And in big games, that is the game, if you know what I'm saying.
Steve, just come to you. You watched the game, didn't you?
Yes, I
at
did.
Wembley. Entertainment value, I thought, was tremendous.
I did,
the cup final.
I agree with Mark completely. For the spectators as well, if I've got a connection with Batley over a number of years, Championship spectators, it gives them the chance to go and watch their team
Absolutely.
at Wembley. And
the turnout from Widnes was particularly impressive, actually. 5,000 tickets, apparently.
It was, and I think I remember Hunslet playing at Wembley, and Huddersfield and Hull Kingston Rovers. Though all those teams at the time were going through a barren period, so it does inspire hope and encourages sponsors. Not just the players enjoy the adulation, but just being associated with a club, going to Wembley, fantastic.
And the skill level, I mean, Matt, you're an Aussie. You don't have the same thing as we do, promotion and relegation, giving Championship clubs a chance to get up into Super League. It must feel a bit strange for Aussies coming here and seeing our structure. But there's some real genuine skill and ability, outside Super League. And I don't know whether you saw the 1895 Cup, but you see it when you see Championship games. They're not a million miles behind Super League.
No, they're not, and you see that in the middle eights over the last couple of years. Both we played in it last year.
Which you have played in, haven't you? Yeah.
So and you see the teams are very competitive. I think it's a really strong competition, and I think it was a great occasion. I think especially I watched Widnes. They had a send off. They took it very serious. All the fans followed. So I think, as you said before, I think it was a bit. It probably should have been played before the main game, but I think both teams took it really serious, and it was a great event.
Well, we've had a readers' poll in League Express this week saying when should the 1895 Cup be played, and I think about 70% are saying before the Challenge Cup final, obviously, 100%. And that it just seems ridiculous not to do it that way.
Yeah, because I mean, when they went out, I went out onto the field when they were warming up the boys, and it was electric.
Yeah.
It was huge for them. So to get that adrenaline buzz there at that moment when they're warming up, and then they won't even notice when we went back out before the kick-off. They won't notice what were around. I did, obviously. They were focused on the job, but I think that if they play it before and then all the fans are in there and everybody gets behind it, I think it'll just make it a better occasion. I mean, it's still a fantastic occasion.
Yeah.
If you closed the doors and played with nobody watching, it wouldn't matter, would it?
Well, playing at Wembley, the fact is that all your players can tell their kids and grandkids they've won a medal at Wembley. That's just incredible, isn't it?
An emotion, you play with loads of emotion, and that's what we've got abundance. And it was funny because we did the shirt presentation on Friday night. I had John Keir, obviously, and Paul Broadbent, the coach and the captain.
And Paul's son played.
Blake, which is a dream, isn't he? He was floating about, playing amateur rugby league, and he just asked me if I'd give him a pre-season, and he's kicked on, But
it's funny, I can remember Paul Broadbent in 1998.
Yeah.
Walking around Wembley with the cup, and he just sort of walked round and round with it. I think he was probably the last person to leave the stadium carrying the Challenge Cup back in those days.
There were a huge bath at that time, weren't they, in Wembley Stadium? And we were in there for a few hours afterwards. I'm not sure it watered in the bath. There were things there, but he's immensely proud of his son, and why wouldn't he be, and things like that. But the emotion on the night before with the shirt presentation, John lost the voice, he got the lump in the throat, Beans did, I did. There were only one man, I don't think he's got an art, it's that Keith Senior, Stone cold. No, he didn't feel any emotion, I told you. We were all nearly crying and wiping his eyes. But
Keith played in that game as well, didn't he, before he went to Leeds?
He missed the semi-final, if you remember, for that knockout punch on BJ Mather, and he played in the final. So there's a nice connection, there's a nice balance for us. And, we spoke about this, memories. Why do we play sport? We're playing for memories, and you know, I got a couple of the guys, Johnny Lawless, Matty Crowther, they did a video to the guys and that, and just said how special it is. You don't see each other every week, you know, you might see each other once a year, but you know, there's that twinkle in your eyes.
You still have those reunions, don't you, of that
We went last year to Wembley, the 20th year reunion. There were a few there. We see each other every now and again, but that twinkle that nobody can ever take away from you, you know, it's special moments.
No, absolutely right. One of the things that struck me as well about Wembley on Saturday in both games was that there were a couple of kids there who originally came through the Midlands Academy, if I understand it correctly. Obviously, I'm thinking about Matt Davis of Warrington, who's come from Leicester Storm and played in that Midlands Academy side that no longer, unfortunately, exists. And I think I'm right in saying that Ryan Miller, who plays on the wing for you, he comes from Birmingham originally, doesn't he?
He does.
I don't quite know how you picked him up, but he looks a real star in the making.
Oh, he's quality, you know, and just about his persona, about how he goes around his business, is fantastic. The extra work he does. But we had 4 people that came through our system played on Saturday. Yeah. You know, there's Paddy and Greg Burns.
Yeah, both Sheffield lads.
Both Sheffield lads down from Hillsborough Hawks. Blake Broadbent, born and bred in Sheffield. Yeah. Ryan Miller, that we brought in from Midlands, and you know, well, from Birmingham, as you say, and he just gets better and better every year, and he's a great kid. And we set off on the journey 21 years ago after the merger to give kids an opportunity to play professional league. And there's 30 odd kids out there now playing professional league. Yeah. 4 of them played for us. Wildest dreams. You're going to play at Wembley, really?
Yeah.
You know, but they have done now, so.
It shows we need to spread this game further, because there are probably kids all over the country in places where they don't play rugby league who could be great rugby league players. Matt, you know, you can't say that, you know, all the best rugby league players just come from the north of England, potentially. They could come from anywhere, couldn't they?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think obviously down south rugby union is massive, and so back home in Australia, obviously Queensland and New South Wales all rugby league. They absolutely love it. When you come here, you've got a mix. You see, the north is all rugby league and the south's all rugby union. So I think there'll be a lot of boys that probably don't make it in rugby league, rugby union, or they could be better rugby league players than rugby union players.
I think Matt Davis said that, didn't he? He was in the Leicester Tigers Academy, but he just saw rugby league on television and just thought he'd be better at it. Yeah. And he probably is.
And Ryan Miller was exactly the same. He was in the rugby union system. He jumped out of it. But yeah, we've got to give the kids a dream, haven't we? We've got to give them an opportunity. And 21 years ago, we set off on this journey to establish the club and give a kid a dream. We were running Junior Eagles, scholarships, academies. We had Sheffield Eagles, which were
and sadly, it all then fell apart.
Well, we got to take an offers because it didn't fit in with what they wanted to go. No. They moved on to Midlands, and I went, no, attach Midlands to us. Yeah. Because you've got to have the top club. Oh, sorry, you've got to have a club that's a professional club that should the pyramid, if you like. And they took it off. Broke my heart. I could have walked away from the game that day when I had to stand in a room and speak to 100 odd kids and the parents and tell them the dream were over.
Yeah. And we're a crazy sport, aren't we, for doing things like that?
Wow. But why Paddy Burns went to Cass, didn't make it at Cass. Blake Broadbent couldn't get it. These were kids that were in my scholarship. Now they've played 30, 40 championship games. Sure. And still a 20-year-old. Yeah. You know, 21-year-old. So, we've got to set all that back up again, which is, it's not easy, is it?
That's true, isn't it, Steve? You know, having a dream as a sportsman is the thing that motivates you and keeps you going.
Absolutely, and sharing that dream is important as well. Yeah. Playing with players who have the same dream as you. Yeah. I think rugby league's got to come to terms with itself of what game it wants to be. Is it an international game with Toronto and New York, and we put all our focus on there, or do we have a slightly, in my view, wider perception and attach the Midlands to Sheffield and everything going on in London? My job takes me to different places, and I see some of the work going on in London. Absolutely marvellous, outstanding work. And you know, kids in the inner city of London are far better rugby players than some of the ones in the leafy suburbs playing rugby union in Surrey.
Well, I remember seeing I was involved with student rugby league in the early 1980s, and I always remember we played an Oxford v Cambridge game in Maidstone in Kent, when the year before Kent Invicta began, if you remember that club. And there was a game beforehand involving a young Peckham Pumas under 19 side, And there were all these young lads playing for Peckham Pumas, a lot of them young black kids, and they had incredible ability. You know, they were throwing the ball around, absolutely having the time of their lives. And I can almost guarantee that probably none of those kids ultimately went on to play rugby league at first grade level. You know, it's ridiculous. It really is. But then, of course, we come to the other side of the coin. Matt, I was going to ask you in particular, you come from an absolute long line of rugby league players, don't you, in Queensland? I don't think many people in England actually probably understand your background, but as I understand it, your great-grandfather played for Queensland.
Yep.
Your grandfather, Gary Parcell, played for Queensland and Australia.
Yep.
And we're here at Featherstone today. Gary played a match for Australia at Featherstone on the 11th of November 1959, that's 60 years ago. And the Featherstone fans among the viewers might be interested to know that Featherstone beat Australia that day, 23-15. And your dad was a rugby league player as well, wasn't he, for Ipswich? Tell us a bit about all that.
Yeah, so obviously my great-grandfather, Percy, played for Queensland, so then...
Before the Second World War?
Yeah, and then my grandfather, Gary, so back home where I'm from in Ipswich, they had the Ipswich front row of my pop, Gary, Noel Kelly and Dud Beattie.
That's a hell of a front
row. So then
row.
they went from the Ipswich front row to the Queensland front row to the Australian front row. So they're all from Ipswich there. They played a game here.
Those were the days when Queensland had its own competition and separate from New South Wales.
It was different back then. So they played over here. They also played at Headingley, and I think they got beat there too. So
11-10 in that, and then England won the third.
They were good days.
Great Britain won the third test.
I watched a little bit of footage of. There's little bits of clips in here. It was a completely different game than it is today. He was
pretty violent.
Yeah, no, especially playing the front rower. He was. It's a different.
And your grandfather Gary's still
so he's
doing strong.
Still going strong. So they actually had an Ipswich Jets Old Boys Day on the weekend, so he was there with Noel Kelly. Obviously, Dud Beattie's passed away now, but so they were there together. Noel's fantastic. He's absolutely going strong.
He's got a fund of stories as Noel Kelly.
I
remember reading his book.
Yeah, he does. So Gary, my pop's starting to slow down a little bit now, but Noel is absolutely on fire.
Yeah. Does your grandfather watch your progress?
Yeah, he loves it. So
does he give you lots of advice?
His eyes are a bit gone now, so he always listens to it. He tries to watch every game that's on TV, and he does, but his advice is still a bit old school. So.
Yeah. Mark, do you have any family connection, or are you a first generation, or were you first generation?
My dad played. He played amateur rugby league for Alton Raiders.
Yeah.
It is exactly the same. It was a different game. That one, in fact, I don't think they should have classed it as rugby. I think it was thuggery. It was absolutely brutal.
Absolutely brutal. Incredible, isn't it? Well, thanks, Mark. And on that note, I'd just like to remind all the viewers who want to participate in the discussion that if they go to at RL Backchat on Twitter, and we'll be back in just a few moments' time.
You've spoken and we've listened. Rugby League Backchat is available on podcast form from all your best podcast providers. If you're on a trip down the M62 or a flight to Toronto or Toulouse, download Rugby League Backchat for the best debate inside Rugby League.
Welcome back to Rugby League Backchat. I'd like to start this segment by going to Steve Ball. Steve, you're the General Manager of the Rugby League Benevolent Fund. You obviously have a long-standing role in relation to players who suffer serious injuries on the one hand, and on the other, when tragedies occur, as they did fairly recently with Archie Bruce, a very sad case of Archie dying the day after he made his debut for Batley in Toulouse. Without talking about that case in particular, Can you just tell us a little bit about how the Rugby League Benevolent Fund was created, why it was created, and some of the things it does for players and families of players?
A lot of people talk about the family of rugby league, but it took till 2004 until the Benevolent Fund was actually founded. And that was on the back of two serious injuries. Matt King, who was playing for London at the time, and Danny Scott, who was playing for Mould Green. Now, they had career-changing injuries, and they were paralysed from the neck downwards. And there was a sudden realisation that the game as such shouldn't respond to incidences like that by simply having bucket collections, ad hoc bucket collections. So the Benevolent Fund was found on the back of those two injuries. We went back in time to see which other players had been injured, and we could take them into our fold. Went back to the late 60s, both amateur and professional. The vast majority of I'll say lads at this time, but now there's women playing the game, lads who loved the game, and we've got them back involved in something that is very rugby league. You're aware that we went to Wembley with,
Sure.
I call it, I'm in charge of a rugby trip to Wembley with lads who are disabled. I don't take a group of disabled people to Wembley. So their behaviour post 10 o'clock is absolutely as rugby, as rugby folks should do. But it's a great thing. But it shows to us that we need to harness all this energy. The spectators in rugby league are absolutely fantastic. I think they're better than most. And when they see things that are wrong, the support is overwhelming. So the Benevolent Fund is there to harness that support, acts as a conduit. Some of the things we do, people don't see. And I smile when I say there was one lad who got injured playing, and because of his circumstances, he'd not had a proper bath for like 20 years. He had to put his kettle on with a walking stick,
Right.
adapting his kitchen. So we did lots of things that were so-called extra to what the state could provide, but it's not just about giving money, it's about having a social centre to ourselves.
Sure.
And being involved in the wider family of rugby league and being part of that. It's all very exciting.
How many players have you helped then, or players' families, since 2004? Have you any idea?
Yeah, we have 20 people what I call on our long-term list. Lads
Of people who need care?
Who need care. Often those are spinal injuries. We've had one or two recently that have had bleeds on the brain and such things. In absolute extreme circumstances, we've had a number of players who've passed away. Some as a result of an injury, some could have done it running for the bus and they have an asthma attack or whatever. And I know you may smile when I say this, but we have people who come onto our notice for 9 to 12 months. Serious injuries, somebody has the spleen removed or has their eye socket broke, but it's not catastrophic.
No.
They're able to continue work, perhaps not playing forever, but it's just knowing in the background, this is what people say to me afterwards, that there's somebody there long term. There's somebody, if I've got a problem, I can come to you.
Yeah.
Somebody's interested in my progression in order to get
That's
better.
fantastic, isn't it? Mark, it must be great for you as a coach of a club, knowing that if something disastrous did happen, and hopefully it never will, but there is backing there for you if you ever
and it's
needed
fantastic.
it.
It's absolutely fantastic, because in times people need to speak, and I don't, men at the moment, particularly when I was coming through the systems and that, you didn't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
And we're all big, tough rugby players, aren't we? But actually, there's still some of that, that softness in you that you need to be able to speak to people. And it's great. The job that they're doing with the Benevolent Fund's fantastic for the game.
Yeah, similar matter. In Australia, they have the Men of League Foundation.
Yes, they
don't
do.
they? Which does I think a somewhat similar job, if I understand it properly.
Yeah, I think so. They also
They deal with players as well who've fallen on hard times.
I think it's got to do with that. So, and then obviously the NRL a few years ago introduced a career-ending injury policy. So I'm not sure if that's still going, but as you said, it's it's a brutal game, and obviously you hope no one ever gets injured, but these things are part of it, and it's great to have support when it happens, and when. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it never does.
I think that gone. Steve.
We work alongside our sister organisation, Rugby League Cares, and they do the education side of it and the welfare side of it. We had a look at Men of League. Our system's better, in all honesty. Men of League have big dinners. It's very social. They help people who've fallen on hard times, and it's a bigger game nationally. What we do is deal with specifics. If somebody needs a walk-in shower, where Men of League may give £1,000 to somebody or whatever, we would pay for that walk-in shower for somebody who's had an injury connected. For the first time, we've had women who play the game, and we paid for childcare while mum's been in hospital.
So you've had those cases
We've
already
had those
of women
cases, yeah.
getting serious injuries.
We don't normally, very rarely associated with people under 16 having serious injuries, but there has been a couple recently that have been quite tragic. It's more about what to do next. So a tragedy happens, and a family who see the lads go out with a bag and they don't come back, for example, all of a sudden the press around them, asking the wrong questions, wanting an angle to on the family, and people just aren't used to it. And it's just about writing those statements, offering some sort of protection, sorting their insurances out. In extreme cases, bringing people back from a long way away if they've passed away, as recent cases has shown. And just that level of support when there's chaos going all around, that we're there, and I always open up with, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've got experience of these sort of situations before. I never offer advice to anybody, ever. But what I do say is, some people have found this helpful, or have you thought about doing it that way? So ultimately, it's always the family's choice. And in many cases, said to me, I would never have thought to that.
Yeah, I must admit, as somebody obviously who's in the media, the stories that I absolutely hate most are stories of tragedy. The other Sunday we came into the office and heard about Archie Bruce. And quite frankly, at League Express, we were all devastated that day. And, we struggled to put the paper together because we felt so sorry and, dejected at what had happened. It's really, it was really quite emotional. And, it's the one thing, Matt, as a player, obviously you always hope you're never going to suffer a serious injury, and there's a very small chance that you ever will. But I suppose it's like doing anything. If you were mountain climbing, you might fall off and kill yourself. If you were a Formula One motor racing driver, there's always a chance you might have a crash, and goodness knows what might happen. So there's always a tiny bit of danger. Boxing is another sport that's obviously potentially very dangerous. You must always have that at the back of your mind, I guess.
Yes and no. Obviously, as you said, there's many sports out there which there's danger involved. But
even cricket.
As you see with cricket, something that you would never think would happen. So you can't think about it as a player. No. Personally, I don't think about it at all. It's just for me, if it's meant to be, if what happens kind of thing, and you can't go out there thinking you're going to get seriously injured. But,
no. Well, you wouldn't play, would you?
No, exactly right. But you wouldn't do a lot of things either. So
you wouldn't cross the road.
Yeah, exactly. Probably. So, but it's great that there's support there if anything ever happens.
Yeah, the thing that struck me out, Mark, I was driving down to Wembley on Saturday. And I switched on the Radio 4 Today programme, and they had an interview with Tony Adams, the president of the Rugby Football League, obviously who's associated with the Sporting Chance Clinic. And he said to me that I found very surprising that of the players playing in the cup final, 6 of them had some sort of link with his organisation. It didn't say to what extent, it may just have been mentoring of some relatively minor sort, but it did say 6 players had contacted his organisation to seek their help in various ways. And it sort of, if that's true, obviously we assume it is, then, a lot of players these days are, opening up a bit more than they used to, maybe in your day, when, if you had problems, you took them home with you.
Yeah, it's important. You know, we talk to them. You got to be, you know, part of the job as a coach is to manage and look after your players and that. And when they need you, it doesn't matter if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, they need you right there and then. You've got to answer your phone. You've got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's
that
great that
sometimes
they're
happens
talking.
for you, does it?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, it's. Look, they're like kids to me, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're my boys, and if they need me, I've got in my car and drove at silly hours in the morning just to go see them. And just,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, rugby league players, I tend to think, are probably the toughest sportsmen of all, physically. Yeah. But, you know, emotionally, they might, you know, be struggling. It's not always, you can't associate physical toughness with emotional toughness, can you?
No, not at all. Not at all. And you've got to be, you've got to talk, you know. And it's, the best thing that comes out of everything now is that people are prepared to talk, and why not? And it was funny because we were laughing on Friday when we all had this meeting at the shirt presentation. Emotion and that lump in your throat, it's not a weakness.
No.
It's not a weakness, it's a strength, you know. It means you've got an heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's important. And I've always done that. I always believe in the players. I need them to be able to speak to me, what they're thinking, what, you know, what's inside their mind, because everybody goes through tough times.
Absolutely. Steve, you've noticed that, have you?
Yeah, well, Tony Adams was a big friend of Tony Smith. Yep. And he spoke to the Warrington players and groups of other players as well. So that was his real connection in understanding rugby league players. And the demands of particularly full-time players, you know, there's even more of a spotlight on them in terms of performance. There's even more of a spotlight on them in terms of people looking at them. They can't go to work on a Monday or Tuesday like they did when I first started, and get teased with the mates and everything. You can be very isolated playing rugby league. You know, you're the most important person when you walk in a room. Sometimes that pressure is enormous, and the expectations of what you have to do. Sometimes they can talk to the mates. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger, and then you can open up completely. And I welcome all that with all the initiatives that are going on at the moment.
It's funny because I remember, you know, in the old days, in the 1960s, when players were all part-time, you know, several of them, my family supported Wakefield Trinity, and my dad was an incredibly enthusiastic fan. And several of the players would run pubs in those days, and of course they were a magnet for fans. You know, Brian Briggs and those sort of guys. And there'd be an absolute fund of stories, of course. My dad would come back home and tell us everything that Brian Briggs had said, Derek Turner had been saying, and you know, it was terrific. And of course, that's quite different now. You don't, although rugby league players are really accessible compared to other leading sportsmen, they're not quite that accessible as they were in those days, are they? It's just a bit different.
And there's a little bit of churn as well with the sport now that didn't happen in the 60s, where sometimes you can be in a club for 8 years and have be very comfortable around some awkward spectators and friendships that go back a number of years. When players move on, sometimes it's very difficult to say this is my home, and that brings its own demands as well.
Matt, you've moved on quite recently on loan to Hull Kingston Rovers. How do you get on with English spectators? What do you make of them?
No, they've been fantastic to me ever since I came over.
I mean, you're still popular at Leeds, aren't you?
Yeah, so I've got nothing but good things. Everyone's been so supportive and so great. It's I love the spectators and the fans over here when they're singing and chanting during the games. You don't get that back in Australia. Everything.
What is the relationship like between players and fans in Australia?
I guess it's similar to here. It's probably a little bit more in Australia, especially in Queensland and New South Wales. You're in the top sport, the most popular sport. Where here you've got football, so it's probably a bit more of a relaxed.
But I do get the feeling, though, when in Australia that the fans are pretty much down-to-earth people.
Yeah, no, they all
are here.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Probably, as I said just before, it's just you don't get that. The atmosphere at the games here, I absolutely love. I love the singing, I love the chanting. My first game at KR was the Derby, and it was absolutely fantastic.
It was, and you had a great game as well.
Yeah, well, that helped. The win helped.
And then you scored a try against Leeds.
Yeah, so it was all going really well until I hurt my shoulder. But
yeah. So, I mean, is your long-term future in England, or do you think you'll ever play again at first grade level in Australia?
It's hard to say. I think if you would have asked me this time last year, I didn't think I'd be at KR. The same when I moved over here to Leeds, I still had 2 years at Manly. So I think that's the way the sport's becoming. It's more professional. It's more you can't sort of look too far ahead. You just got to be in the moment, just do the best you can where you're here, and then you sort of go from there.
I know you're going to have some more Parcells on the way who will be playing in future.
Not yet, but eventually.
Well, that's marvellous, and I think on that note we'll draw the discussion to a close, and I'd like to just thank all my guests today: Mark Aston, the coach of Sheffield Eagles, Steve Ball from the Rugby League Benevolent Fund, and Matt Parcell, currently on loan at Hull Kingston Rovers. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you'll be back next week when Matt Shaw will be in the chair once again.